Seeding rates and coated seed. Wanted to address this situation because I had a producer a few weeks ago that we dealt with this. He ordered what he thought was well more than enough seed. Actually ordered an extra bag thinking, hey, I'll have plenty and I can take that bag back. Once we got to reading the seed label, realized that it was coated, and then we done the math of how many pure live seed he needed to seed per acre, and realized that to get the seeding rate he wanted, he actually barely had enough seed to get that seeding rate. And so thought this is something that need to be addressed. I know he's not the only one that struggled with it. I've dealt with this issue myself. Proper seeding rate. It's critical to establish a successful stand of any crop or forage. You visit a corn or soybean farmer and you talk to those crop producers as they strive that they match their seeding rate with soil productivity to maximize yield and to hopefully manage the input of that seed cost. And so when you talk to them, you have to say, well, what's your corn population? Well, they'll tell you, I was trying to plant 30,000 seeds per acre. What about your soybeans? Oh, I plant them at about 160,000 seeds per acre. So they know within 1,000 seeds per acre what they were trying to achieve. For forage producers, on the other hand, it's just as important to know our proper seeding rate and what we're trying to get accomplished. But many times we don't have an idea of what that actual seeding rate in the stand should actually look like. And so we're more worried about how many seed we put on and not actually how many seeds that are coming up. And so seeding rate is important for both the crop producer and the forage producer, because for the forage guy, it makes sure that he has a productive stand, provides quicker ground cover, and provides much better weed control through competition over the long term if we can get a successful stand in the front end. So having that proper seeding rate is very important. Coated forage seed. For years, farmers just seeded the raw, clean seed of the desired forage crop at what a known rate, whatever that recommended rate was. And so they were used to doing that. Most of their equipment was calibrated that way. However, in recent years, many companies have been coating seeds for several reasons. One's for easier handling. Many seeds that are coated because they're very small. You take your clover seed, alfalfa seed, and so Bermuda grass seed, they're all very small and they're difficult to manage, and even to try to attempt to sow correctly if they aren't coated. And so they do that for easier handling. Another, with those legumes that we mentioned, they can include that inoculant in the seed coat, and that's something that the producer doesn't have to do, so that it made it a benefit to the producer to have those coated seeds. It helps improve the survival and the final germination of those seedlings. And so it doesn't improve the germination rate, but what it happens, it actually improves the survival of those seedlings once they germinate. And so so many times if you've done a germination count a little bit too late, you would see seedlings that died that you would think that they didn't really germinate. And so it does improve the vigor of those seedlings. And also it works to improve the flow of light and fluffy seeds through planting equipment. Crabgrass seed are very, very light. They have a rough husk on their seed coat, and so they do not flow through planting equipment well. So by putting a coating on them, it allows us to be able to handle them, and it flows through particular types of planting equipment much easier because they are coated. What is in a seed coat? Most seed coats consist of a clay substance. Clay aids in the moisture retention and helps seeds stay moist in less than ideal conditions. Some seed coats also contain a blend of micronutrients that aid in the root and shoot development of those young seedlings. On most of your forage legume species, like we mentioned, they will contain an inoculant on those seeds. Some of your higher end seed coats may also contain polymers that absorb water extremely well and retain it for the seed to use later on. Some seeds that they feel it's important that they include a small amount of fungicide, and so it helps to prevent seedling diseases shortly after germination. There's many different kinds of seed coats. Many of your seed companies have different ones that they work with to help include those seed coats. Seed coats are good, right? Well, it depends. For the seed itself and for you sowing seed, yes, seed coats can provide great benefit to the seedling, make handling and planting easier. But many of the seed coats may make up to 50% of the weight in a bag of seed. Um, and they do improve germination and the survivability of the seedlings. That's actually supported by several university studies and company trials. I've seen some from University of Kentucky, some from Cornell, some from other universities, several of the company trials they've done. Um, and so it does help for the seedling. The thing is, most older planting equipment are calibrated with non-coated seed, especially with our grass seeds, where we can still buy coated. We can buy some coated seed and some uncoated seed. And so when you have equipment that's made to handle the uncoated and you're using coated seed, it can be expensive. And so for some producers that have learned an expensive lesson, seed coats may not always be advantageous for them. Seed tags and labels. You need to have a good understanding of the seed tag and the label that's on that bag to understand or to determine the proper seeding rate. And so on a seed label, you will find the amount of pure seed. And so the reason they put this on there and they just don't put crop seed or put on whatever forage seed is because some forage crops produce lots of dormant or hard seed, such as crabgrass, switchgrass, many of your other warm season grass, native warm season grasses, and alfalfa produce lots of dormant or hard seed that don't germinate. Then you'll find the germination rate. You'll find weed seed, any other crop seed that are there. And then in this case, like the seed label I show you, if you look at the bottom left, you will see that it says seed coat. And then there's one that says, in a lot of times you'll see inert materials, and inert materials are going to be like the shaft, the chaff from where they clean the seed, maybe some dirt, other types of material that get into that seed bag that aren't seed or aren't weed seed or aren't part of one of these other portions that may be causing weight in that bag. Understanding seeding rates. Seeding rates are critical for the appropriate coverage on forages, and that means a more productive stand, longer stand life, and less competition. And I'll kind of you want to use an example to explain is UT Extension's orchard grass seeding recommendation is 10 to 15 pounds per acre. Well, in a pound of seed of orchard grass, there's 540,000 seeds. So actually, UT wants you to put down 5,400,000 seeds to 1,801,000 seeds per acre. And so if you do the math just on the low seeding rate, you do the 5,400,000 seeds. When you divide that by 43,560, the amount of square feet per acre, you will see that you end up with 140 seeds per square foot. That is at the lower seeding rate. And so that is each seed, each crop that we seed has that seeding rate based on maximum yield and production. And it's really determined on the basis of seeds per square foot. And so in this case, it's 124. So let's look at seed coats and seeding rates, and we're going to talk about using uncoated versus coated seed. And so in the example we talked about with orchard grass, the uncoated seed, we know 540,000 seed per pound, seeding rate 10 pounds per acre, that's 124 plants per square foot. Well, we've seen the germination rate on the last seed tag was 85% germination rate, and so we're going to assume that's what this seed would be. Well, that out of those 124 plants or 124 seeds per square foot, that would be 105 plants per square foot. If we go over and look at the coated orchard grass now, that seed label in one of the previous slides said it was 45% pure seed. And so if we sowed that same seed at 10 pounds per acre, that would be 4.5 pounds per acre of actual seed. And so then that's 55 plants or 55 seeds per square foot. If we look at it's 85% germination rate. That's 48 plants per square foot. And so even if we looked at the uncoated seed, and 50% of those seeds, they germinate and 50% of them died, that's still 53%, 53 plants per square foot, versus if every one of them survived for the coated seed, which is 48 plants per square foot. And that's not a big difference. University trials and studies show that the coated seed do germinate and grow and have a greater stand percentage per amount of seed put on per acre than the uncoated seed. But that's still a great percentage of plants that would have to die of the uncoated seed to equal the same rate that you would end up with if you were using coated seed. So that's why it's important that we put the appropriate amount of seed, and that's why I like using live seed no matter what rate I use, no matter what kind of seed I'm using, and I'm using the amount of live seed that I get per acre. And so what is pure live seed? And so pure live seed, and so seed coats are not typically as big an issue when we talk about species that don't produce lots of small amounts of hard or what we call dormant seed, because we can just use the germination percentage and they end up being very close anyway. But with species that produce higher amounts of hard seed, or seeds that don't germinate, or that are in what they're called the dormant seed, alfalfa, crabgrass, switchgrass, other native warm season grasses, and the seed rates are in pure live seed per acre, then it is important that we calculate that pure live seed. And so what is pure live seed? It's the actual percent of seed that will germinate and grow that's inside a bag of seed or that we're trying to sow. So I'll take a calculating pure live seed. And so we want to calculate pure live seed on a seeding rate, so we know exactly how many pure live seed we have in that bag, or how many seed we need to sow to get the correct amount of pure live seed. And to do that, you need to know the pure seeding percentage, your pure seed percentage in the bag, and the germination rate listed on that seed label. And so in this case, we have a 50-pound bag. We're going to multiply it by our 70% of pure live seed, and then we're going to multiply it by our 88% germination rate. So in this bag of seed, there's 30.8 pounds of pure live seed in a 50-pound bag. So, okay, maybe I want to use that, and I know my seeding rate, and I want to know how many pounds of those seed I need to put on per acre to get the correct seeding rate of pure live seed. So if I know of this particular seed, I need 10 pounds of pure live seed per acre. So I take my seeding rate, which is 10 pounds, divide that by your 70% germination rate. Then I divide that by my 88%. It was 70% pure seed, and then my 88% germination rate. That will give you 16 pounds, 16.24 pounds of seed to equal 10 pounds of pure live seed. So if I was using this bag of seed that had this information, I would have to sow 16 pounds to get 10 pounds of actual seed. Pure live seed and seed coats. Pure live seed is a seeding rate recommended because of the high importance of having a thick stand of forage and the high rate of dormant seed in some species. Seed coating technologies, however, coat all the seeds, the dormant and the live seed, and they don't improve germination of the dormant seed. So it is still important to calculate the pure live seed with coated seed, just like we do with uncoated seed for the particular crop. Coated seeds are usually only 50% pure seed in a bag, or roughly 50%. Some may be slightly higher, some may be slightly less. In this case, we're going to use 50%. And we're going to use a seeding rate of 25 pounds of pure live seed per acre. So you take your seeding rate of 25 pounds, divide that by 50% pure seed, and we're going to say we have a germination rate of 85% and divide it by 85. Well, to get 25 pounds of pure live seed on per acre, it would take 58 pounds of a coated seed to get 25 pounds of pure live seed. So many times where the mistakes are made is when a farmer assumes that they bought a 50-pound bag of seed, and they roughly say, well, 50 pound, I've got 50 pound of seed, and they only use the germination rate, and they say, well, about 90% of them is going to come up, so I'm just going to buy, put on an extra 10 pounds or extra 5 pounds to cover that. Well, actually, in this case, they only have 25 pound of seed, and so instead of a 50 pound bag, because only 50% of what was in that bag was actual seed. Seed coats and seeding equipment. Seed coats make it imperative that farmers calibrate their seeding equipment. Coated seed flow through the equipment faster and drastically reduce the number of seed per pound. A 50-pound bag only has 25 pounds of seed. Therefore, it can make for very expensive when you're overseeding for these overseeding mistakes. And so once you put 50-pound, you put a 50-pound bag of seed, say, and you're using this chart that we see in the middle picture there. You put a 50-pound bag in there, and then you got 5 acres to drill, and you set it for 10 pounds per acre. And so maybe you're growing, you're using one of those, and you're setting it for 10 pounds. Well, what you don't realize is that seed coat is 50% of it. So now you only have the number of seed that is in 25 pounds and not in 50 pounds. When you set that, then you make your first 2 or 3 passes and you're already out of seed. Well, what happens is that seed now has a coating on it, which makes it a little denser. It runs through that machine faster, and you have half as many seeds as you would have if it was uncoated. And so if a producer does not realize this, they're going to they can make a very expensive mistake, and they'll have a very thick stand where they have seeded, but then they have to go back and buy more seed and spend the time that it takes to get that seed setting and calibrate that seeder to be at the correct rate. For the first time that I ever dealt with coated seed, this is exactly what happened to me. We were seeding an old tobacco patch. We were seeding it down with fescue and orchard grass. And normally what I would do, I would seed the fescue with a seeder similar, a cone type seeder like this herd. I would seed the fescue first, and then I would put the orchard grass in, and I would seed it over the top, and then we would usually cultipack all those seeds in. Well, the first time I bought a bag of coated orchard grass seed, and I knew my settings. I had them written down. Okay, I knew I could set my thing for orchard grass at this setting, and how far to drive and cover my tracks, and it spread the right distance and everything. Well, this time it wasn't that way. When I dumped the seed in there, they were orange, and I knew something was wrong. And so, but I used my same setting and did not realize at the time the difference in between a coated seed and an uncoated seed. And I made my first 2 passes, and I was almost completely out of seed, and I still had over 2/3 of the field left to seed. And so very quickly I realized that I had to make adjustments. And then I done some more reading on the label and realized that there was only like 35%. A further 35% of that bag was seed coat. And so I learned a very expensive lesson with seed coats, because I had to go buy more seed and then spend more time calibrating equipment that I had previously calibrated for an uncoated seed to use for a coated seed. And so that was a good learning experience. And I think that's where seed coats really get a bad name from lots of people, is because they have a trouble getting their equipment adjusted accordingly to the seed coat and the type of seed that they're using. My final thoughts: I think seed coats greatly improve the survivability of young seedlings. I think it can improve stands, and especially in less than ideal conditions. I've seeded lots of orchard grass over the last 10 years. Almost all of it has been coated since that first mistake that I mentioned earlier. And then also in recent years I've been seeding alfalfa, and so I have to calculate Pure Life seed when I do the alfalfa. But I've seeded all of these in numerous years with different types of moisture, different soil conditions, And I do believe seed coats greatly improve our stand and survivability of those young seedlings. However, many of us as farmers, in haste and looking to do things in front of the weather, or because we have a limited amount of time, we end up learning a hard and expensive lesson because we didn't read the labels and we didn't adjust our equipment or calibrate our equipment correctly. And even if you ask retailers, a lot of times the retailers may get blamed because we sold somebody a seed that they didn't know was coated, or they didn't set the machine up correctly. Well, a lot of times the retailers may not even realize those seeds are coated because they've ordered the same seed they've been ordering for years. Well, this time the company, because it was a benefit, they started coating the seed. And so many of the mistakes that we see, we run out of seed or we run out of seed too early, and then we don't seed the whole field, having to go purchase twice as many seed to finish, or we have a stand that we seeded but it wasn't thick enough because we didn't make the right calculations. And so all these are lessons that we learn. So that leads me to my final thought is, please read your seed tags, then calibrate your equipment according to the seed that you have, and then determine your proper seeding rate based on what your seed label, what your seed tag says, and then how you have calibrated your equipment. If you have more questions about calculating pure live seed, or your appropriate seeding rates, or how to calibrate your seeding equipment, you can contact your local extension office. Thank you.